Hey, welcome. Today, we're unpacking a really powerful and, frankly, intense biblical symbol, the sword of the Lord. Now, this is all based on a sermon by Pastor Elvis for Church, and trust me, this isn't the kind of sword you're probably thinking of. It's way more mysterious and a whole lot more powerful. So, get this. The book of Revelation gives us this wild image. You've got a figure on a horse, and there's a sword coming, not out of his hand, but right out of his mouth. It's a really strange and striking picture, right? And it immediately makes you wonder, yeah, what exactly is this sword? Is it just a metaphor, some kind of crazy weapon? Well, according to the sermon we're digging into, the answer is actually the key to understanding a totally different kind of warfare.
Okay, so first things first, we have to wrap our heads around the basic nature of this weapon. I mean, what does it even mean for a sword, an instrument of battle, to come from someone's mouth?
Well, right off the bat, the sermon makes a super important distinction. We are not talking about a blade of steel here. The power isn't in some physical object. No, it's in something way more potent. This is all about a different kind of fight entirely. And here it is. This is the core definition from the sermon. The sword is God's spoken word. It's his commands, his curses, his declarations of judgment. So when God says something, let there be a famine, or let your enemies rise against you, it just happens. That divine word is the weapon, and it has this unstoppable absolute force. This chart here really spells out the difference the sermon is talking about. You look at the Old Testament and you see guys like Joshua and Samuel wielding actual physical swords to carry out God's judgment in battle. But then in the New Testament, especially in a book like Revelation, the focus completely shifts to this spoken sword, the word of judgment that's wielded by Jesus, by angels, and even the apostles. So if the sword is the spoken word of judgment, that brings up a pretty interesting question. Who gets to wield it? Let's dive into how this incredible authority is actually handed out to different figures throughout the scriptures. Turns out, it's not just one person or one being. The pastor explains that God actually delegates this power, this authority to act as his agent of judgment, to a whole range of figures for all sorts of different purposes. Okay, let's just walk through this for a sec. First up, you've got prophets like Joshua who are using literal swords, but it's all under God's direct command. Then you have angels, and their swords are symbols of a coming judgment. But the sermon also points out that God gives this sort of authority to earthly rulers, like the king of Babylon, to go out and conquer nations. And get this, in the end times, even a figure like the Antichrist is given a great sword to just bring chaos to the world. And finally, you have Christian believers who are given what's called the sword of the Spirit, the word of God, for their own spiritual battles. It's everywhere. So you see all these examples, the prophets, the angels, earthly kings. They're all kind of building towards one final, massive, climactic event. And that brings us right back to that first image from Revelation and to the sermon's ultimate warning about the end. This is where the pastor's message gets really, really focused. The idea is that all of this history, all of these examples of the sword, are leading to one final decisive moment of judgment. And once it starts, there's just no stopping it. The sermon uses this quote from the book of Jeremiah to really hammer this point home. This isn't just some temporary punishment. The sword is sent with a very specific mission to pursue and pursue until the opposition is completely and totally consumed. So the big takeaway here is the absolute finality of it. According to this interpretation, once this judgment begins, there's no turning back. The spoken word goes out and it will do what it was sent to do, completely and without any chance of failure. And just to paint a picture of the sheer, unbelievable scale of this, the pastor highlights a really vivid detail from Revelation. It's a prophecy of bloodshed so massive that it flows for 200 miles. I mean, it's a graphic image for sure, and it's meant to show a judgment that is just absolute and completely overwhelming. So what's the core message in all of this? What's the one thing we're meant to take away from this concept of a spoken sword? Well, that brings us to the final, central question the sermon leaves us with. So if God's spoken word of judgment really is an unstoppable sword, the final question the sermon leaves us to wrestle with isn't if it will strike, but who it will be for. And that's all for this explainer. Thanks so much for watching.